Hi. These brief comments on the power of belief are part of a larger project, the power of dignity, which we hope will especially help people regard all others, especially others who have issues with substance use and substance use disorders, some of whom their lives revolve around those substances, to get out of that painful cycle and regroup with people around them in a healthy way. The power of belief connects with what Henry Ford famously said: whether you think you can or think you can't, you're right. What I believe Ford is talking about here, it's more than having a thought, especially it's not a thought we can choose. It's a gut level conviction about what's possible, things that we can or cannot achieve. And those gut level convictions involve emotion and feeling, and they derive from other people as well as just ourselves. Our ancestors, the people around us right now, and everyone in between. So whether or not we believe in ourselves is affected by whether the people around us believe in us. And we are all around other people, and if we want to be able to help them to live up to their possibilities and live with their values and objectives, it helps if we feel responsible for how we regard them. And this is something that happens all the time. Teachers have a tremendous effect on their students just because of what they believe and expect. A famous story of a teacher who looked at her class list, saw numbers, interpreted them as IQ scores, thought she had a gifted class, and the whole class performed magnificently all year long. Only at the end of the year did the teacher realize that the numbers on the class list were locker numbers. Didn't matter. The expectations delivered the results. Teammates. Most of us, if we're ever involved in a team sport, want to be on a team with others who believe in one another and believe they can win. The outcomes aren't so great when some or all people on the team believe we're going to get creamed today. It happens in medicine and treatment. The famous placebo effect, where if the person taking a medicine and the provider providing it believes it's going to work, it's much more likely to work. The opposite of that is the nocebo effect, where if the provider doesn't have faith in the medicine, the patient may not either. Would we want to be receiving say a prescription where the provider says, this barely, got FDA approval for this indication? Let's hope you're one of the lucky ones. And people will be given labels, internalized labels, and they may be negative. Someone who's called a loser in their childhood or adolescence may struggle against that for the rest of their lives. It becomes a limiting belief. Even if they don't believe it themselves, struggling against it takes away energy from what they might achieve. Tamara Levitt. Whether or not we realize it, we see the world, all the world, through a lens of biases and judgments. And these things happen just like that, automatically. I'm here in Vermont, where we're not far from Boston, not far from New York. There are lots of Red Sox fans, there are lots of Yankees fans, there are lots of hats like these. And someone who encounters someone in one of these hats may immediately be drawn to the person, attracted. Ah, my tribe. Or they may be dismissive of the person. Ah, rival tribe. And that can happen regardless of who's wearing the hat, regardless of whether they're a baseball fan or not, maybe the only hat they had access to that day. But the leap from a single mark to a lot of assumptions about the whole person is what bias is all about. It can be conscious or unconscious. Conscious, we call it explicit. Unconscious, we call it implicit. And it can be positive or negative. We're drawn or dismissive. And positive bias in how we behave, maybe even just the vibes we put off, we can nurture a person's growth and development, or if it's negative, we can impair that. And that's what we want to become more aware of and consistently be more helpful to others. So part of the main message of this discussion is that very often my response, my reaction to another person is more about me than it is about that other person. And if I'm looking to be more mindful to avoid negative responses, I need to be aware that I may respond negatively if someone looks or acts or behaves differently than I do. And to realize that what I might associate with that signal could be wrong. Someone may have encountered a few cocky athletes and decided that cockiness goes along with athletes. Then they encounter a person or see someone in an interview who's sort of a decorated athlete who's all about the team and the coaches and the fans and is very humble about their own contribution. Well, they need to revise how they think of athletes. There are women who have been treated badly by men. So men are people to be avoided and mistrusted. And then they, perhaps in a therapy group over weeks, months, and years, encounter men who are kind and considerate, respectful, and want to look after the woman's well-being. In that position, the woman has to revise how she thinks of men to encompass who's there rather than base it all on past experience. The word stigma can refer to that mark or characteristic that sets the observers up for judgment, whether it's warranted or not warranted. And the word stigma also gets used to refer to that condition where I may be judging someone based on the limited information that I have. Stigma is sometimes characterized as an inaccurate stereotype. It's a judgment based on very little, maybe almost no information about the other person. Here's an example. Birds of a feather who look the other way, birds of different feathers, I should say, who look the other way and pin a label on the other bird. There's judgment, there's this automatic establishment of a pecking order because of different feathers. It may not be so bad when birds of a feather flock together. If they're with birds of like feather, they may get along and have a good time. What's unfortunate for the birds are depriving themselves of contact with the birds of a different feather, which could enliven and enlighten and broaden their bird life. So it's an unfortunate experience when the categories, we need categories to think and communicate, yet they can degenerate to labels. Labels can become stereotypes. Stereotypes can lead to prejudice, and prejudice can be expressed in multiple ways. Sometimes it involves discrimination where the othered person is treated differently in a disrespectful way. And becoming aware of our tendency to operate this way is an important attribute. It's widely held that we humans are at our best and achieve things through collaboration and connection. And Carl Sagan once said, if you wish to make an apple pie from scratch, the first thing you must do is invent the universe. Brain scientists tell us that we're hardwired to need one another. For the brain to develop and function, we need other brains. Negative bias, even if we don't act it out, can have an unfortunate effect on others. Some speakers who are demonstrating this, they'll put a person in the front of the room, not facing the audience, instruct the audience to think badly of the person, and it impairs the person to function on the spot. If the audience thinks well of the person does better in terms of just muscle strength and sense of well-being. So that the vibes we put off can have a benefit. Best to cultivate positive vibes to the best of our ability all the time. Dos animata. Through judging, we separate. Through understanding, we grow. Judgment and othering isolates us, which is, it's like a plant deciding not to accept rain and sunlight. We need these connections to grow. Raquel Willis. We are transformed through our differences. Life gets better for all without the stigma, without the judgment, and with the connection. Studies around the world show that individuals with an addictive relationship with substances are the most prone individuals to be judged by others. World Health Organization in 14 countries found that the most prominent source of judgment was drug addiction, more than crime, more than HIV/AIDS. The fourth most highest was addiction to alcohol. And the mental and physical problems among individuals with drug addiction were associated with being stigmatized, suggesting that the stigma contributes to their ill health. And fear of judgment based on past experience or just expectations leads many individuals with severe substance use disorders, with addiction, not to seek treatment. So if we want to help and nurture others by our presence, we're wise to listen, not judge. We can cultivate conversational receptiveness. So we might not want to say, "You look like a hippie." We might want to say something like, "I really like the flower in your hair." Cultivating mindfulness through practices helps us as individuals be less judgmental of ourselves and of others around us. And this is by exercising a self-conscious presence in the current moment, in the now, through all manner of practices, which can include formal meditation or simply focusing on, a sport or walking or being with a pet. It can help to just switch it up. If we talk a lot, talk less. If we don't talk much, talk more. Not so much about our achievements, but about our limitations, maybe our mistakes, which humanizes us and opens the pathway to human-to-human communication with another person. Consider just offering the gift of silence in a conversation. The other person may feel it, they may not. Consider speaking out if you encounter prejudice. Not automatically. Sometimes speaking out could make a situation worse. There may be situations where it's necessary to hold other people accountable for unhealthy or unlawful behavior. That can be done with acceptance, with respect. Holding people accountable can be a natural consequence of their behavior. We don't have to be the harsh, judging, punitive one. There are times in my work in hospitals treating addiction where their behavior made it impossible for them to continue in that setting. And I knew the only possible therapeutic option I had was to ask them to leave. And sometimes the individual and I could have a conversation as that was happening that would frame the discharge as an opportunity for them to take more stock of how they're handling themselves and perhaps follow a healthier path from there on. So the main message in this talk is to get to know the people around you. Conversations, just getting to know someone, busts stereotypes and enriches lives. Honesty, humility, and responsibility are the characteristics that I see as most essential for individuals in addiction recovery. They're also most essential for any of us as human beings. And they pay off. They feed into growth of the qualities of meaning, love, and humor in our lives. What's not to like about that? I'll leave you with this. If you and I are different, I shall not talk about you. I shall not talk at you. Rather, I shall talk with you. I especially want to listen because then, and perhaps only then, we both shall grow in the ways we want most. Thank you.